in the interest of giving everyone the most time with Roya, I would just like to thank you all for coming, and Jitendra for recommending that we do this. And I hope that everyone will enjoy what they learned today, and that we can all help make Afghanistan a stronger, more technologically advanced place where girls and women feel safe and are able to create the innovation and the economic prosperity that we wish girls all over the world will have. Thank you.
Thank you. Great, I'm Jitendra, as Margaret mentioned, and I first want to just acknowledge Margaret and Sean. Thank you for hosting the evening tonight. It's always a pleasure to come to your salons, and it's great that we have Roya here. But Roya is with us. You were at Stanford doing the SEP program for the last several weeks, and we have the opportunity to kind of get to know Roya and get to know what she's going after. We'll unwind that story. We'll get into all of that as we go through this. It feels like this is the second time we've done this, right? Right? I used to run a speaker series at Accenture, and I had Roya come. But that was your birthday. That was the day of your birthday.
Yes, that was my. But you didn't give me my gift.
We sang happy birthday. But yeah, maybe a few gifts then in that case. Roya, why don't we start with where it all started? First few moments when you were a child, because I know that's a big part of how your whole life is expanded. Tell us more about how it started.
Sure. First of all, I wanted to say hi, everyone, and I would like to first thank you, Margaret and Sean, for hosting us to be here. I really appreciate it, and also Jitendra for organizing the program. For me, my childhood, I just remember two things from my childhood. One thing was in 1996 when my family back to Afghanistan. Because during the Russian time, my family migrated to Iran because they were part of the feudal family, and the Russian at that time communists killed them, so they had to leave. But then they're back in 1996, and then after 2 weeks, Taliban took over our city. There was an empty plant of the land in front of my house, and on that empty plant of the land, one day I saw that Taliban collected all the TVs and the books and set them on the fire. Their message was clear. Only their ideas matter, only their beliefs matter, and only the rule of the Taliban. So at that time, I always imagined that I wanted to have some things to read my books and watching my cartoons, and it could be disappeared before someone can take from me. And it reminded me until I became 16 years old. It was 2013, 2003, that there was an internet club was opened up in Herat, and that only boys and men could go there. And everybody talked about this magic box that you can talk to the people, and you can type some things, you can find thousands of information about that. And there was only one library in Herat that only had very old books at the time. If you find any information, you have to go to that library, and that's the only way you can find information. There was no any other way. If you couldn't find your books that you wanted, you have to give order as someone should come from Iran to bring that books. So that magic box was fascinated for everybody, and it was only for the boys, and my cousin, my brothers could go there, and a good girl wouldn't walk in such a club. And I was really insisted that I have to go to this cafe, and then one day the owner of the cafe allowed me to come, but in one condition, that I had to leave before the men's coming to the cafe. But at that time, when I saw the computer for the first time, it was changed my life, because I saw that there are more than out than what was around of me, and there are more reality than one reality that we know. This reality always was from what your family says, your father says, what Mullah says, and what the teacher says. And I found there are so many other things. And at that time, I said technology should be my center of my career. That day, I decided to become a technologist.
I think that you and I met for the first time in 2014. I think we were
Yes.
self-showing. And I remember when you told me about your story, the thing that touched me was this aspect of we have girls here that are just developing their personalities, getting to know who they are, developing their competencies in different areas, experimenting with what feels right, what doesn't feel right, and growing up. But you were in an environment which is a very kind of controlled environment, some would say oppressive environment with the Taliban kind of control. But also the social structures were very confining as well. You had mentioned to me back then of how your own personality developed through the interactions, through this magic box to the rest of the world. Maybe you can tell us more about those
Sure.
things, and those things that you never told anybody, what you did.
Very well before me. Well, I was a part of, I am one of 7 children, and then I had 4 brothers, and 3 was older than me. When you're living in such conservative countries, mostly your brothers make a lot of decisions for your lives. And at that time, I was a very, very shy girl, and I didn't have that much confidence in my life to talk that much, even at the home, or sharing my opinion or saying anything. And that magic voice actually helped me because I started to talk with people. And I started to talk with the people which I didn't know them, and they didn't know me, and they didn't care that I was a girl, and I could talk with them, and they didn't care where I am living. And that was, it's helped me to learn more and increase my information and my knowledge, and also increase that how I can talk with people and how they can respond to my conversation. And just I started to talk at the home as well, and like no one asked my opinion, but I still gave my opinion, and that was
No, that can't be true.
Then I gave my opinion. My father at the beginning was laughing, but when I gave it, my brothers always said that they never asked me, and then I still gave. It was when it was about politics, about any culture or anything, I just started to talk, and it was empowering me. And also give me more self-confidence. But also technology helped me when I go to university to start to do my research, because many of the girls didn't know how to work with computer, and the boys was much better because they worked with computer, they did read their research, and that was also helping me during the university time that to be that much.
And I mean, just to underscore the environment at that time was not dangerous at times. I mean, it was not safe at times. And this was, I mean, thinking about growing up, thinking about going into this, let's say, alternate reality, right? A kind of a new reality, but also being in dangerous situations, right? With the Taliban and all.
Yeah, and at our time, most of the girls married at a very young age. 14, 15, 16 years old was the age that most of the girls get married. And this is the only one reality for many of the girls, and one way that they get opportunity, and it's the way they think that they are get happy life, but unfortunately after the marriage, many of them, they find out that they're trapped in a life that they cannot get out of them. And for me was when I learned about technology, it was so many other realities and so many different opportunities, and marriage wasn't for me that to be only reality or only things that I have to do. So I was taught that approach to that marriage is not everything, but that was also another reason that I was so passionate to giving the same truths and same way that I was improved my life to other girls.
Yeah, and there's so many great things that you experienced and you created and you pioneered. But before we get into those things, this time was a very formative time for you. Maybe you can talk about how your family was with you during that time. Were they supportive? How were they able to kind of because they'll have friends, they'll have relatives, it's a society, and they have to also interface with their society. What was that relationship, let's say, with your parents, between you and your parents, or maybe your siblings?
As I said, I had brothers. My older brothers most of the time made decisions for us, and then my father was supportive, and but my brothers no, because they're part of the society that are conservative, and they will be judged if they allow me to do what I want. And one way that I learned to do the things that I wanted is to respect the culture, and with respect of the culture and telling my fathers every step of what I'm doing, keeping them informed and get them involved. At the beginning, my brother was really not happy with what I'm doing, and, but later on when they saw that if I keep their trust, what I'm doing is not something wrong to bring the shame to the family, but actually I try to develop myself, and also in terms of economy support and family, and as well I'm doing something good for the society. They get at the end of the day to support me at even the time that lots of the conservative in my society come to my father and say that she bring the shame, you have to stop her, because just I went to the PRT and talked with the military, for them was a shame. That's why I did it. At that time I was for the university and I had to do that. So there's lots of things that come, and many of the time that my relatives stop to talk with me, or they're telling my family that if I keep continue, I will be a bad role model for other girls and their relatives, because relatives also is influence in your family. It's not only your father or your brothers, your uncles, your even your husband of your aunts, cousin, everybody is making decision for your lives. So you are not belonging to one family, you belong to so many people.
How did the other girls respond when you were doing this? Other girls must have been looking at you and saying, you're doing something really scary but interesting, maybe I'm interested too. How did that happen?
Well, actually, they get much more interested because we had a small magic box that we could keep it and we could talk with the people, so we could find information, and no one knows what we are doing with that magic box. And I told the other day a story to Nani and others that at that time when we was working on the computer and finding different informations, my brother asking me, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing the coding. So they didn't know what I'm doing my computer. But it's not a good idea. But that magic was connected to everything. So the internet was definitely empowering the people, especially in such a conservative society. I remember there was in 2004, there was war in Herat because the governor of Herat fighting with the police. It wasn't a Taliban involved, but they are fighting with each other. And the way that we get connected, it was just through the computer that we could talk with each other. So that was for a couple of days we couldn't go outside because there was like bombing. But the way that we could connect it was our computer.
I just want to mention, thank you for saving a seat for adults. If the children want to have maybe the adults have a seat, it's no pressure, but feel free to do that. We have a lot of people standing in their seats, and there's also a floor, so we can bring the crowd closer in. So how did this start? So you took all that you've done, you found other girls that were also interested in what you were doing. You felt inspired by them also doing this, I would imagine. So where did that go? You start to tell us about where that went from there.
Well, I started to go to computer science. We have two Afghans here, so they probably know that Afghans and mostly that region, so the families prefer if you go to university, the only field is good, engineering or being a doctor. And computer science wasn't at all in the list of most of the families because they didn't know what computer is. So I found out in the list of there was an entry exam, and I found that in the list there is a computer science technology. And I was choose that, and thanks God I was selected on that. And my family all the time asking, how you become the computer science? I said, well, I put in engineering, I don't know why they put it because magic works. And many of the people at the time thought that computer science is that you will be typist whenever you graduate, because you know what the computer and software engineering is doing. I graduated from computer science and I started working for a university, Herat University. I became the first IT coordinator that was female at the age of 20. So there was 22 public university, and I was the IT coordinator of the Herat University. And my job was to managing all these big projects that was running by NATO, by EdyEdy, and the University of Berlin. And that was giving me a lot of insight of these projects, how it's work, and how I have to respond. And actually, because I was involved with social media and exchanging information, finding ways, it was helped me a lot because I was the most successful IT coordinator to use that how to communicate with people and donors and bring more donations for Herat University.
Who were your allies during that time? Who were the folks that were helping you as you were starting to become a pioneer at that point, right? So who did you consider are folks that helped you along the way?
My family, definitely. My dad and my father and my brothers, they are the first that they helped me. And of course, after that, my friends. Many of my friends, my teachers, and my first boss who trusted me and gave me such a position. When I was started working, there was 470 other employees that all male. So I was the first youngest, working with all of them. And they will always bring in all these documents that I have to type for them. And I was just wanted to be nice with them to type this document, but I wasn't typist, I was supposed to write it. But after a few months, I told them that, listen, I'm an engineer, I wanted to work in my own field, but they didn't get it for many years after that. But now they know what I did.
So something happened. So you were one of the first or the first female tech CEO in Afghanistan. So what happened between those college years and then being this entrepreneur? How did that happen? What happened?
So in our class, we had a lot of female who were very good in coding. So we built we were very good into building the applications. Well, at that time, we did everything free for the people. And in 2009, we meet with Deputy Undersecretary of U.S. Defense that they had running a project called Task Force for Business Security Operations. And they come to our university and they want to see that what our applications do. So I invite all the girls to bring in and showing their application, also the boys as well. And then they told us why we don't think about to make it commercialized. And we, at that point, we never thought about commercializing our projects. So then I started with my younger sister and two other colleagues to start the Afghanistan software company. And building an environment that more girls that who graduate from computer science, they can come to that company and they can start to work. One of the issues at that time was that most of the girls who graduate from computer science, they couldn't find the jobs. And then there was a problem. If you working for the government, it's very few seats that you can get, and unless that you have someone knows someone knows you can get there, you couldn't get those jobs. And the other problem is that you have to work with the men. The male colleagues said most of the family didn't want it, and most of these girls get married, and then the husband doesn't want to allow, or the mother-in-law doesn't allow, or the father or the brother. So lots of the stories. So women couldn't feel comfortable to work with in an environment that more male. And definitely IT industry was absolutely male dominated at the time, and still. And so we built this company that all be mostly female, so we have an environment that easily everyone can work. But that's how we hire a lot of female programmers and bloggers in our company, and how I became the first female CEO in Afghanistan.
Wow, yeah, so a lot of things came when you did that. It was like the next plateau where you went. And you got a lot of recognition for that. How did the recognition start? Like, how did that start?
I think being in tech, first I have to say that being a tech female CEO anywhere in the world has a lot of obstacles and challenges, but for someone like working in Afghanistan at that time, it wasn't only the challenges of rising the finance, challenge working with the conservative industry, getting the contracts, not getting paid, or even doing for them, and they wanted to have paying the cheaper job, but we also had to deal with the trades and conservative and following and spying in our company. So we had a lot of the challenges, but we found one way is that to become a digital entrepreneur. And at that time, I again used the social media, and I went to the LinkedIn, I registered there, and I started to send everybody's and whoever asked me, I said that if you think that I can provide the services and web designing software, we can work for you guys. And that's how I made the NATO media asked me to come, and then they see our application and our projects. They made a documentary, and this documentary was supported by Italian American who lives in New York. He never came to that regions, and we saw that videos and he's interested to give us some projects. So that's how it started. And then we started working for the clients. And then Francesco, after that, giving a couple of the projects to us, he get interested, and I was pitching it at our application that we wanted to build a platform that allows women to write the blogs and upload the movies, but they get paid online. So then he got interested and he invested in our campaign. And we never meet after 8 years after the investment. And he wanted to come to New York.
Yeah. By the way, feel free to ask questions or think about your questions, because we will have an opportunity to do question and answer before we finish. So definitely, especially the girls in the audience, I'd love to see it, especially my little daughter here. I'll ask that. So you got some notoriety, that you got some funding, and you were starting to get recognized. But you were Time 100, which year? 2013. 2013. Tell us about how did that come? So does anybody not know Time 100? So Time Magazine lists the top 100 people.
Most influential.
Most influential. Yeah, it's a coveted list to be a part of. How did that all come about?
Well, our opportunity started by these projects that we started to working on. Then we decided to give 100% of the profits back. and building the IT centers in the public schools and teaching other girls to learn about technology and they can change their lives. And with that, we got a lot of recognition, a lot of the news started to write about our works. And then one day I received an email that I was selected for Time magazine and they wanted to interview with me. I didn't know even what was Time. At that time, if you remember, at that time, if you remember, there are lots of this spam emails coming in your I wasn't paying attention, and then I received another email. But this time they asked me that they were gonna interview me and they wanted to do some research and they want to talk. And then I saw that this would be serious, so I forwarded to my business partner. I didn't know what is that, so I just was teaching about this, and there's a gala in New York. So, and then he said, "Oh, congratulations!" He joined me, called me, and he said that you deserve it. And still I didn't get what much deal. So it's okay, I did it, and they did an interview. They went through my programs, what I'm doing. I took the local news and local people, and then I went to the Time magazine, and there was an event, and I didn't know so many of those big people there, so they asked me, who do you want to meet? And the only person who knows it was Amir Khan from Bollywood. They asked me, I didn't know the rest of the names, they and others. To meet with Amir Khan. And then my business partners get a little bit mad on me and said, did you ever watch the Who Else? I said, this is a celebrity that I want to meet. Yeah, that was unfortunate that I become 500
and somebody introduced you, right, at the award ceremony? Cheryl Sanders?
Cheryl Sanders. Yes, and then she sent me an email that if she wanted to meet with me, and then I came to California and meet with her. That was a huge deal for me.
So that was 2013. We met at the Tribeca Disruptor Foundation, another award that you were recognized for. You got the red hammer, I got the black hammer. The red hammer ones are the ones that actually did anything. Black hammer's just friends. But your mission started to grow, right? It was you were an entrepreneur. You are a serial entrepreneur, but you had your company. You showed me the business plan that one time. I remember seeing it. But your interest.
Didn't invest on that.
I didn't have any money. I'm raising a fund now. Now maybe I'll raise my fund. But your interest started to expand, and there were other kind of programs and projects. There was university work and things, and you start to get these other activities on your platform. So talk about some of the passions that you have there.
Sure, and then I found out that there are millions of girls who are out there just like me, curious but giving a narrow vision to explore the world. That the only thing they want is just giving them tools. So we started Digital Self-Fund with one goal and one dream. The goal to see that technology being an accessible option for everybody, but especially the dream is that everyone, even those who are living in conservative countries, regardless of their gender and the background, they will have access to similar opportunity and high quality education. So we built the Digital Funds. We're trying to building the IT centers in the public schools and providing training for age of 12 to 18 years old to learn and to mostly from 12 to 18 years old to learn about technology, about how to work with computer, coding, games, social media, business skills, and robotics and AI that we just added to our programs. And that was change whole of the shift my whole program from to being a tech entrepreneur to being a social activist. And one of the reasons that I did it because it was 2014. I had to leave Afghanistan because of many reasons. The mail industry didn't like the work that I did because I got very fast to grow my company. I had more than 100. Started to work for my company. Started working in Pakistan and Egypt. So they feel me as a threat for their big contracts. So many of them start to send the threats publicly and they didn't care. They told me that I have to stop. And I wasn't care about them, but then they started to spy, send the threats, giving our names to local Taliban. And this will always make it challenging for me to work in Afghanistan. And I had to leave, but then I found that it's easy for many of the conservative, if you be one person who wants to do something, or maybe 2 or 3, because it's new, they don't want them. But how about you build hundreds, thousands, and millions of people who do similar things? It would be very difficult, either for the mail industry, but also for conservative, for any other groups to stop that. movement with many of the people who do the similar things. And today we have thousands of women who are doing the similar in technology. And technology has become one of the field that if a girl says, I'm going to engineering, the families get more happy that they go to computer science field. We have more than 35% of the female in computer science in Afghanistan. So we are still working more harder to bring the attention, not only my organization, but there are a couple of other organizations as well that work in tech and to bring the awareness that is very important that we have to focus on that.
Your fund is the Digital Citizen Fund, and that's the focus, is to empower girls through technology.
Yes.
And it's fascinating to see. I mean, girls in tech, girls who code, STEM for girls is such a big topic for us here. But we're talking about back in the early 2000s that it touched you personally, and that you were drawn into it, and you saw that this was a path moving forward. I mean, that's true pioneering. I mean, there's a lot of women that have gone through technology and built Silicon Valley as well. But I mean, you've done it in an environment where it was new to do, and it was odd for a girl to do. And that's just phenomenal. And then to see 35% of the girls go through this type of education, and it's really, really an accomplishment that you've done. It's really highly, just to me, it's just amazing. What was the university work? You're working with the university as well. Anything you want to touch base on it?
Which university?
Right. Ford? No. No, you can go ahead. I'm supposed to put you on the spot. You're supposed to put me on the spot.
So now we are working on building the. I'm kidding you. Sorry. Well, we are right now. I'm giving the story before I go to that questions. We are. I don't know how many of you heard about Afghan Girls Robotics. There was a team of teenagers from Afghanistan that in 2017 we built a team that they were supposed to come for competition, but unfortunately they couldn't get the visa. So because they didn't get the visa, we decided from 167 countries, only 2 countries in the world didn't get visa. It was Afghanistan and Ghana. And then we decided to fight back, and we again used social media, and we covered stories, we reached out to the journalists. And then for a couple of weeks, our story was all over. And then 53 signed a petition, and then 53 US congressmen signed another petition and told to the State Department that they have to give a visa to girls in Afghanistan. But in 2 days, through the competition, President Trump himself got involved. And the girls could get the visa, they could come to the United States and they compete and they get silver cards. But that wasn't only that. When they come back to Afghanistan, they become as a team of the courage and hope and unity for Afghan communities. That they were a victory, a vision of a hope for a country that for centuries ignored women's ability in science and many other industries. Today, the President Ghani, Chief Executive Dr. Abdullah, former President Karzai, and many of the politicians in conservative, in open mind, they are all love these girls and they're feeling proud of them. Because of them, we understand that teaching the kids at a young age, the importance of teaching kids at a young age robotics and mathematics. And that's why we work with the Afghan governments today through building the first school of the science, technology, engineering, art, and maths, with a focus on AI, robotics, and blockchain. And with Innovation Center, and within 5 years, we are hoping to build a university that take the model of MIT that provided training on high-tech technology. So you see Afghanistan today as a country of terror and war. Let's see within the next 10 years as a country of the high-tech technology. So we are hoping for that.
We just fast forwarded through a lot. So sorry for missing the mark on this one. So Afghan girls, the girls robotics team from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
So they didn't have a chance to. They were banned from coming because of the ban, the travel ban. Trump administration cleared that up for you, and then the girls came through. They did pretty well, right, at the competition.
Yes. They got the college. They got silver medal for the college.
Silver medal. I mean, just imagine, right? I mean, it's changed the lives for these girls, and they became celebrities.
Yes.
Because every time I saw a picture on Facebook, I show my daughter, I show Avni, I show Geeta too, and we're just so proud of all the kind of stuff that was going on. Right?
Yes, because then after that we decided to go to different competitions. We went to Estonia and then we get winner, and Poland gets second, and Estonia get third. That was much bigger. Yeah. And then after that we went to many other stages and to compete. We lost and we win, and that was a part of the game, but these girls became just a symbol of hope and inspired thousands of the kids in Afghanistan and outside of Afghanistan. If the kids in Afghanistan, in war-torn area, especially the girls, can make it, I'm sure that in other countries, other kids also can make it. So it's just about giving the tools and opportunity to them.
It was a tremendous story that we were seeing from the outside, but it must have been very challenging personally for the girls. And there must have been ups and downs during their journey through all of this, as much as it was amazing. How did you think the girls took that journey, their own personal development?
I think that was one of the things as a courage. That's what I can say about these girls, especially for the captain of the team, that she was 14 years old. And after the first time when she joined the team, first competition, when she back, a week after that, ISIS killed her father. And that was very sad. I mean, that was horrible. And when it's happening, and her family, her brothers at the beginning, they didn't want that she continue this work because everybody blamed her for that event, which I don't think that it was related, but they blamed her. And even the newborns blamed her. But then her mom was stand and say that this is her father's dream, and if she go choose as a robotic team, and she can continue her father's dream. That's what right now she's working very hard to make her father's dream to become true. And she goes to many of the stages. She's very good speakers. And when I see her, I just feel very, very proud of her because see these kids at this young age, how they can take the responsibilities, make me to have to work harder. And as part of our being a responsible citizen is that we have to give back to our community and working together to build our nations.
They're heroes in that regard. So then you said that you start to expand basically the platform where you have now an entire program that you're developing in Afghanistan. Which city is that going to be?
Right now we work with the governments, Afghan governments. We're gonna do in 5 cities, 5 zones of Afghanistan. We're gonna build such kind of schools, and then their headquarters will be in Kabul. So we just got a few months ago. We got from Afghan government a big lands inside of the Kabul University. It's worth of $12 million, and we got Yale University to help us with design of the campus. And we got Dutch government with commitment to paying some part of the construction. And we are looking for other donors to give the rest that we will be able to make this directly come true.
Right, so the land was given by the government, and it was pretty valuable land. Yale University designed the campus. The Dutch government is going to put some sponsorship in there, and you're raising funds. And this year, in fact, there's going to be kind of a launch or a program that's coming out of that.
Yes, I mean this year we're also going to have a big conference at the end of the month of November. That's showcasing of all these young girls of their approach and the achievement that they had in engineering, technology, art, and entrepreneurship. So this way we can also influence in governments and also the power of people and communities that they say that this is going to be happening. And if you're giving more tools, we can help more kids. So the conference will be the beginning of that, and we're encouraging more people to join in to discuss that we can build why we have to build the infrastructure, why we have to invest in such a program.
In the fall of this year.
Yes.
So what technologies are going to be involved? So AI,
robotics, blockchain, cybersecurity, and these are an art. These are the fields.
And so where did the blockchain come in? I know there's a story behind blockchain.
Blockchain is like in 2013, we had that platform that I mentioned. It was a platform that allowed women to write blogs, but we had hundreds of people who started working for us in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and many other countries. But the problem is that how to pay them. Pakistan and Afghanistan didn't use PayPal, and many of these women didn't have a bank account. And we decided to use the mobile money, but mobile money also was expensive and also didn't work in many of the parts. So then we heard about Bitcoin. I don't know how much you are interested in Bitcoin, but that was helping me at that time. So we heard about Bitcoins, and then my business partner one day says, maybe that's the base way that we have to use that. And then we bring the Bitcoin to Afghanistan. We paid our employees in Bitcoins, and that's everything. I've totally changed the business shift in the Bitcoin. That's how I get involved with the technology of the blockchain and the Bitcoin. And I see that the future would be the blockchain. That's why I wanted that the kids in Afghanistan, especially women, learn about blockchain and how to do coding and be involved at a young age, that will be prepared for future jobs.
I want to take questions, so please raise your hand and we'll take some questions.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure.
Hi, so my name is Tabak, and I'm a software engineer at LinkedIn. I also brought a couple of friends from LinkedIn over here as well. My question is, you mentioned that LinkedIn played a part early in your career in helping you become more well-known as you connect with more people. I would love to hear more about that, just because I think we work on these products every day, and it's always nice to hear how LinkedIn has given different people opportunities. So that's one question. And then the second question I have also is, as the first, or one of the first female CEOs of a tech company, and a notable female leader, how do you feel about having that responsibility of representing your gender well, representing your identity well on behalf of other women in countries and in tech also? Because it's not something that you necessarily chose, but it's just something that you have to come about because of who you are. So I just wanted to.
Yeah, the first question, yes, LinkedIn played a huge role in my life. I was, especially in my career, I was, one day I received an email that asked me that to join the LinkedIn. I think one of my friends just joined there, and I was clicked on that, and I found out that that's the best way to find a lot of clients.
Nice!
And then I found that lots of the professional people that I was looking for them there in LinkedIn, so I started to send them notes, and that's how I started. And my business partner was in the LinkedIn. He reached out to my website, but my computer was taken down. They hacked my website, so he couldn't reach out to me for 4 months. I always had trouble with my competitors because boys always wanted to showing us that they are better than us, and they always trying to attack my either my best friend. And then my business partner then decided to the LinkedIn. He put my names and he found it, and then he said that he's interested, and he's 4 months he's trying to find me, and that's how we find me.
And the second question about how you feel like you're in a situation now where you're viewed as a leader. I think your question was how do you feel in terms of embracing the role that you have, in terms of how other women see you and how other people see women as well. You're kind of like a visible person.
I think that in Afghanistan we will be able, we are change that perception. From back in like 2010 when I started my company, it was so difficult to say you are a woman and you are in tech and you are an engineer and you want to get the contracts because everybody will look at you a different way. And they didn't want to give you, they didn't trust that you can make that purchase happen. But today is different because it created a lot of women who are role model. And especially in terms of technology and innovations and education, we have a lot of women partner today. That we create role models, which I think is very important to create more role models, and the kids can see it. And then also another reason is that if you provide training at young age for the girls, and you empower them and give them the confidence, and also give them a sense of the leadership skills, they will be changed. If the women start to support each other, it would be very difficult for male industry also to stop them. But yes, the male industries today, half of them start to respect me. I started to even send them requests to support us on the cause, and I'm happy to working with them. But still, there are a couple of people that still don't like it, which I think that is fine.
Yeah. So I think you touched on a really important point, which is it doesn't take just one gender to change a gender issue. I think it takes all sides.
Yeah. And if you have more people in the same field, it makes it easier. If you want, or even 2 or 3 still difficulties that you can see, but if you have thousands or hundreds, I think that more education and awareness for the same field, any field that you can start, and then yes, the model invest on this woman and tech, so another reason.
Thank you so much.
Good questions. Other questions? Yeah, will you go first? Or?
What an incredible story, and I'm very, very happy to meet you. And as you were speaking, I could see there were people who were almost sobbing. So this is phenomenal. So one question I had is it's fantastic that you guys are creating all these schools and IT centers and things like that. And it seems like you have a source of funding. How do you attract teachers? How do you attract female teachers? And sounds like it's only like a 5-year project so far. So how do you get PhDs? How do you get amazing teachers to come to Afghanistan?
Well, for that, we don't have female PhD in terms of the technology, but for the future program that we are, for the school that we have designed, we are trying to get some of the teachers locally that we have very good professors that are working with the couple universities so they can provide the training. But some of the fields that we don't have, we can find the teachers. We're gonna either do it online training, the virtual training, or we're gonna bring the female teachers that are around the newer countries like Pakistan, India, and Iran that they have very good female teacher. I think in terms of the teacher, we wouldn't have have problem.
That's good. And does the government block websites, or do they let you use or not use certain social media? There's so many countries around the world, right?
Here, you've always been courageous. This is a very courageous thing that you're doing at this point in time with the U.S. Relationship with Afghanistan and what's happening with the Taliban. Can you let people know what's happening on the kind of political scene, the environment that you're doing this project in?
Well, I mean, right now, Afghanistan going through a very tough time because we have elections going on in September, and then in the same time we have the Americans who wants to pull out their troops, and they wanted to do negotiation with Taliban and make a peace with an Afghan. But that's not gonna bring a lot of changes in our society because Afghanistan, after 18 years, we have a lot of achievement in terms of the women empowerment, freedom of speech, healthcare, education, and especially like women in decision makings. And today we are totally different society. And unfortunately, media is not covered that. They only cover the bad and bad side. And whenever is something is happening, they cover it and make it such big news that everyone thinks that Afghanistan is all every day in the war, which is not. And but with that, we have also 50% of the populations that living under 21. They never seen the Taliban. They have the sense of the democratic country. They grew up in the freedom, and now Taliban is supposed to come back to the power. Of course, we think that we all get tired of the war, and it's time that we all Afghans sit down and talk and get a peace. But I hope that this peace doesn't mean that the freedom of women should gone or the achievement of 18 years, especially the rights of youths who never had, they don't remember all the darkness of the time of their parents' generation or the time that we spent. They don't know what's happening at that time. So they deserve a better future. They deserve a better hope and wishes that they have, and they can get their goals. But at this time, that's why we keep continue to do what we do, and this is nothing gonna stop us. Even Taliban is gonna, we're gonna go and talk with them and see this is gonna help the future of Afghanistan. We have to working on empowerment of the young generation, especially young women and as well the boys, and then working on the innovations, advancement of the country to build in the ecosystem of the startup. So that's what we are working, and I think that if it's supposed that I have to talk with Taliban, we are going to talk with them. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, just to put this in context, I mean, you did it beautifully. I mean, the Taliban is going to come back into basically power, and the administration wants to take the troops out. And so, rolling back the clock to how the Taliban ruled the country is a real distinct possible future, and that's a disaster, especially after what everybody's done, what you've done. This program that you're putting together in the fall could get a lot of visibility at a time when the world is going to be thinking about this. Wait a second, the United States went into a war, pulling back out. We just rolled back the clock, but yet here's something that came out of this. Here's what grew out of those last 21 years. Yeah. This innovation program, a big one, and the backers behind that, Dutch government and others, have an opportunity really to kind of call it courageous innovation or call it whatever you want to call it, but it's a courageous thing to try to pull off. And it's also going to make my feeling is it's going to make a statement to the new Taliban government that this is maybe a real thing and might be part of their new future that they have to accept.
Yes,
and especially if there's a visibility around it. And so before we convened the folks here, we're just having conversations. Irakli was here. He's the former defense minister of the country of Georgia. Some other folks were here too. I mean, this is in that region. Can innovation play a role to kind of to solidify peace, or at least get the attention on this is something that every country should have, and Afghanistan should, of course. And how can we kind of help you kind of make that go? I'm thinking about LinkedIn in terms of corporate spots. But no, I mean, this is a great opportunity, I think, for corporates, for individuals and others to get involved. Yeah. So, sorry, there was a question here. I didn't want to miss it. But.
So thank you. So first off, like, thank you so much for sharing your story. And so my question was, like, how did someone like the female members of your family react to like what you're doing, like your mom, or like I think you mentioned you had a sister?
Yes, I am one of 7 children, so I have 2 sisters and 4 brothers. Yes, my mom was supportive, and then in many cases my mom started with my brothers to support me at the beginning, but now my brother is also very supportive of my work. And my sister, youngest sister, is working with me. So she took my approach, she went to computer science, she graduated, and she involved with my business in Napkin Digital Software with a digital sound fund, and now she started with coffee, so we are all always involved. She's 6 years younger than me, but she's very tough. I mean, sometimes I can talk with others, negotiate with others, but with her, like sometimes.
That's great.
Is there a question back here?
First of all, I want to applaud you. I don't think you are aware of the incredible integrity and strength and power of this young warrior. I lived in Afghanistan for 60 plus years. I taught at the university. I know her culture very well. She says it's a lie. She says I speak Farsi better than she does. It was, if you ask me what is my favorite place in the world, I'd say Afghanistan. I taught young women and young men. I also went to the hospital to see disfigured young women, acid thrown in their faces, them hiding their notes on their person to go home to a family that was hostile to them. So no one's aware of the doors that you've opened. And I went to Afghanistan way before you were born. But it was unbelievable when you'd go to the country and you couldn't walk into the villages where I went dressed like this, as you know, with your education and the incredible power that you have. So hats off to you. It's amazing. I've witnessed it. I spent a week in jail in Afghanistan because I told them that you can see the footprints of Buzz Aldrin on the moon, and that's apostasy. And I was taken, the mullahs came and got me, and I went to prison. But I escaped and adopted an Afghan young boy and brought a Taliban young woman to my home and spoke before the Foreign Affairs Council and said, you want to know what the enemy is? This is the Taliban. Is this the enemy, this sweet young angel? No, it's ignorance. And that's what you're fighting for. So hats off to you.
I appreciate all of the work you have done for Afghans. If it wasn't because of you and your colleagues who are working in Afghanistan, maybe I never had this chance to stand here or sitting here. So thank you.
Thank you.
We have a question.
Questions, please.
Hi. We've been talking a lot about with the current political climate, do you ever feel you keep going through all these challenges? So what causes you to persevere?
Good questions. I think I believe a lot on the gods, so I think that the gods is in my side. And then the second is that I do the things that I think that is correct and is right, and for doing that, God also tells us to fight for that, and I will fight with anybody who, not anybody, I mean for not even fight. I mean that it's kind of like for me it's a challenge, and I like the challenge to take over and doing it and telling that yes, I did it. And I might go through very hardship, but when you believe on something and you care about the values you think it's important for you, you need to take it over. Otherwise, it's not for me. If I'm not doing these things, I don't feel that something is. This is my proposal. So when you have proposed and you have an idea, so you wanted to have it, and for that you need to try not giving it back or giving off. So.
So, obviously there's a lot of changes happening right now with the elections and then with what the US government does that could disrupt a lot of what's going on. But you made this major advancement in the technology space and being a leader and an inspiration. If you look at the girls today that you're working with and that are gonna be showcased at the end of November, the work that they're doing, for that generation, what are the one or two areas where the next you would have a big impact in Afghanistan? Is it government? What are the big areas if somebody came forward as a woman that would have that next big change?
I think that that's a good question. I think that this generation that I saw, they are actually doing much better than me at the time. When I was 16 years old, I just get excited about that magic box. But I see lots of my students at 16 today started businesses. One of them has 25 people work for her. And she make money and she gives to the community. And this is amazing. And at my time, again, I work with a computer and now I have a team of teenagers that is same age, 16, 17 years old, but they go worldwide and go to different stages and compete with the world-class students who are working robotics. So I see that this generation are different. This generation are our future leaders, and I see them today are the leader of any fields that they are. And I think that in terms of the politics, we have a lot of women. They're very good in speaking and fighting for their rights, and that's would be the next field that the women can change. And we have the women in the business side, so that's another way that we can see that would be changing Afghanistan's future. But definitely technology and innovation, because that's my field and my passions.
Are there other areas that are really off limits to women right now that eventually we hope to see women in that we can share with us?
We have in construction, we have females, some females that are half company, but the problem is very well dominated. I hope that we have seen more women in that field. I think that in hospitality we have less women. I know that one woman has a hotel, but we need more women to have in this area. In politics we have a lot of women. And in media we have a lot of women. Actually there is a woman just appointed as the head of the films industry of Afghanistan. This is a woman, she has a PhD in film. She was the only one who had a PhD. And then in terms of the arts, I think that we have a lot of women from them. And then technology is the same. And so like I said, there are some fields still women still work in transportation and hospitality and engineering fields, that is more known jobs. But in agriculture, women do everything and put their names on the products and handicraft is the technologies. So it is a time that women get the credit for the work that they do, and also in the banking system. So I think that these are the fields that we need to have more women. But women who work there, they need to be in front, not let them to men's with them at the back.
How about in the military and the police?
We have military, but they still, yes, military, police, we have the women's, but we need to have more as a general, yeah.
We talked about this some time ago, so what about going into the government for you? What are your...
Had so many female leaders, so then if you don't have it, then become yourself.
I love it. It's beautiful. Wonderful. Thank you.
So along the lines of your question, I have a question that maybe we can end afterwards. So we have a lot of young girls, and these were probably around the age that you started exploring this magic box. But, you know, these days, when kids, girls and boys, are exploring the magic box, there's a lot of emotional danger in there. There's a lot of bullying. There's a lot of just social dynamics that are emotionally very, very strenuous for the kids. What would you say now? I mean, when you were going into computers and the internet, it was different that way. And you had a mission. You were in a different environment altogether. But here, it's a different type of war, right? Sometimes that children feel going online. Any words to share on how to think about it?
I mean, at the time that we used technology at the time, because we didn't have any other ways to find information. For us, that was the only source to get information, like get access to the world. And that was the only way that you became a digital citizens and without getting permission to follow the rules. That's the reason we use. And I use it not more for the chatting and communicating with people, but also for finding information, finding resources, and learning more. So that was the reason that I was used mostly technology. But yes, I was at the time did some note things and chatting with people, but that's also helped me to learn English and communicate and increase my confidence. I would say that they have to just more focusing on their positive sides, and as to use most of the time your mobile and phone. You have to learn how to talk with each other. I mean, more be with each others and in persons, and if you wanted to use computers, mostly there are lots of online educations that the families can put for them, and you can go there and use that.
Yeah, it's so many different worlds, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. I want to thank you, Roya. Thank you for taking all this time.